real success stories told by the people who lived them.
We're going to have some guests on this show that everybody knows, and we're going to have guests on this show that nobody knows yet.
One by one, Nick Hyder is adding hits to the Hitstreak.
Blessings, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the Hitstreak. I am your man, Nick Hyder, and in the Hit Lab with me today, I've got an extra special treat for you. Joining me, and we're going to have a good old time today, folks. Check it out. I have a former professional athlete. He's also an author, and he's the host of the Finding Your Competitive Edge podcast. He's also the executive vice president of Revolution Mortgage. In the Hit Lab with me today, help me welcome Brian Covey. How we doing, baby?
Nick, I'm doing fantastic, man. This is local, so this is awesome for me. And then I know we've been trying to connect up for some time, so we're going to bring the fire today. We're going to have some fun.
That's the first hit of the day right there, baby. I'm ready. All right, so you are in your fourth generation, your fourth team, your fourth sales force to reach the $1 billion mark in annual volume and annual revenue, right? So I got to start right there because honestly, you're the first person I've had in here that I can say has achieved that I know of, right? So first of all, incredible. That's 1 billion with a B.
It is a B.
All right. So obviously you figured some things out. What is the secret sauce? What is it that they all have in common that makes that happen, right?
So I look back, sports or building teams, fourth one now. Great teams have people that are coachable. They have people that are committed and dedicated. And the leader is the example. And I found through all of those, the mentors and people that have taught me from sports and leadership, is the fact that who you are becoming really does matter. And focusing on my personal growth, making sure that I'm always getting better, that started to attract even better people. And that's why I think the time was cut down. It took me over a decade on the first one, and then a little bit over 90 days on this last one to grow that.
So things really do compound, yeah?
They do, for sure.
I guess they could compound in the wrong direction too if you don't know what you're doing.
If you get stuck in those, right? I mean, we all have patterns and we have limiting beliefs. So if you're not working on yourself, how many people have repeated the same year over and over? And they're like, man, I haven't got any better in the last decade.
Yeah. The
last 5 years. Well, it's because there's repeating the same things over and over.
Yeah.
Right? Once you learn the keys to success and you start to repeat those, you can teach other people. You start to win at a higher level.
Man, I can remember years ago, I think it was like 3 times. It was when I noticed, I was like, man, my New Year's resolution's been the same thing 3 years in a row. Yeah. I could say there's probably a lot of people that way, right?
That's probably more of the actual reality for people than the other. If you look at percentages, right?
That's right.
I mean, the scary thing is you look at people's fitness, you look at their finances, and they're not improving year over year. They're stuck in these old patterns.
Well, let's take the folks back just a little bit because, all this didn't happen overnight. You mentioned your first team, it took a decade to do it, right? So we have a couple things in common. The first being professional sports, right? So tell me a little bit about your professional career.
Oh, man. Well, I tell you, it started as just a little 3-year-old, right? My older brother was 5 years older, so I was the one going on the field, chasing him down. If you keep up with professional soccer, you would know Kyle Rote Jr. was also playing with Pele. So people know the name Pele. Kyle Rote Jr. was my first coach in our church league.
Really?
So I was like, look, like there was probably a little interference of God going, okay, you're going to love the sport. And I will say this, I fell in love with the sport because of Kyle, because of my dad. And then I had another coach, Richard, and some people along the way that just made me fall in love with the game. And so going out training, doing the extra work, you're more willing to do it when you actually love that. And so as I went through, that became my sport. And I tried basketball, I tried football, I tried these other ones, but I kept coming back to soccer. And I think it really was the love of the game. I love to go out and do the extra trainings. I love the people that are out there. And I had some success through high school. We won 3 state championships at Houston.
Wow.
Yeah, I ended up getting to play with the national team, got to train with the U.S. Olympic team, all of this. And I wanted to go play D1. And, people that know my story know I am not the tallest. So playing goalkeeper, it was like, no, was what I heard from so many people. And all I needed was one yes, man.
That's right.
That's all I needed was one. I ended up very, very serendipitously, the way that it worked out, I was committed to UConn, and then that didn't work out. Coach Ray retired. Memphis, where I lived. The coach had always been at the games, always been around us, big supporter. And I knew there was a great goalkeeper coach, and I knew the foundation of their culture. I knew some people there. And they said, hey, we want you to come into the program, give you a shot. worked out.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
Man. That's awesome. So, yeah, man, like, we had a very similar conversation with Blaine Bishop talking about, like, he's not the, like the normal prototype of what like a person of his position might play. The same for you. And I can remember, I was a smaller guy in professional baseball. Everybody's like 6'3", 6'4", and so I just wanted to make sure, like, when I took my shirt off the first day of spring training, they're like, dang, that guy worked his butt off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I had to make a statement the first time we even changed clothes, because like that was what I was trying to do to get attention, right? To get people to look at me.
Dude, I know that one well. So I was training. We had to do a 2-mile and 12-minute test. That was in preseason.
That's legit.
And as your goalkeeper, I have two things now working against me. Goalkeepers aren't known for being fit, okay? Also not the tallest one out there. And so what I would do is just put in the work. To your point, I would show up and I made sure I was lifting weights, I was doing the training and making sure that I was ready. Because you're right, that first impression, especially as a freshman coming in, you only get one chance to impress the upperclassmen. And are they going to welcome you in, or are they going to go, this guy hadn't been putting in the work?
That's right.
So I made sure I put in the work.
What were, we talk about this a lot. There's a certain thing that athletes bring to the workforce when it comes to overcoming obstacles and challenges and defeats and things like that. That's just a part of life when you've played sports especially at a high level and for a long time. How would you say like that has affected your ability to continue to push through things when things were at their hardest and so on and so forth?
Man, so people talk about grit, right? And being from Memphis, you'll hear about this and all that. But I look at the word resiliency is what has stood out to me. Because you're going to be knocked down, you're going to lose games, you're going to make a bad play, you're going to get injured. All of these things are setbacks that potentially, how many times have we seen people that get injured or they have a bad game, they never come back. We know those stories. But to be successful in business, and I found even as a parent and in life, look, you just be prepared to be knocked down. It's how you respond. And what I've learned the greats really do is it's their response time from being knocked down, learning the lesson while you're down there. How quickly can you get back up and get in the game? Because the only person I've learned that can put me on the sideline in life is me.
That's right.
So if I put myself back in the game, I need to be ready. What was the lesson I learned? How quickly do I get back in the game? Because many people will take 3 days, a week, a month, and they just sit in their sorrows like, oh man, this didn't work out. That deal didn't work out. People left my team. They didn't join my team, whatever. How quickly can you mentally get back in the game and start putting reps in?
That's right. Caleb Joseph was in here recently talking about his transition from, as a young player, he was really good, but he said he was really selfish. And it took what got him to the next level past college was learning that it's not about me, it's about what I can provide and the trustworthiness I bring to those other guys that share the wins and losses with me. That's right. So being a good teammate's incredibly important, right?
Oh, huge. And I think back to soccer's 11 players on the field. But the reality is you have players that want to be on the field as well. And I remember I was a captain my last 2 years in high school and in college. And one of my roles, I remember learning, the coach would always say, you got to bring everybody together. Everybody has to be on the same page. Because if you only have 11 that are on the field that are ready, what happens when somebody needs to get subbed out or come in the game?
That's right.
And so your role does become, now I look at coachability. And even today, I was joking with one of my mentors last week. I said, man, I love this, because he was giving me some tips, right? And I said, I love being the student again. You have to love part of that process of what can you teach me? And if I believe this, if you're willing to learn from anybody, you're always going to be moving forward.
That's right. That is right. Man, that's fantastic. All right. So we have a mutual friend in Marcus Whitney. So like, how excited were you? Because I didn't plan on asking you this, but like, I didn't playing baseball and golf and all those things. Like I learned more about soccer in the last 5 years than I did my entire life. My buddy Jeremy Weber was a college soccer player. So I learned a little bit from him, but dude, like we went to our first Nashville SC game last season and like, it was incredible.
Oh yeah.
That stadium, the whole thing, not to mention their uniforms are just awesome.
They're legit.
They are legit, right? So how excited were you to see that when they announced that they were bringing that here?
Unbelievable. And I'll say my 3 kids, right? So my oldest and my youngest play, both of them, and my daughter travels and on the top team, and my youngest being 7, getting to go to the games with them is phenomenal. So we bought season tickets. We got great seats and all that because it's the experience. And now you have players like Hani, MVP of the entire league. We get to watch greatness. You got Walker Zimmerman out there, right? I mean, defensive player, Joe Willis in the goal. Like, it's fun because we know the people and we get to listen to that. Now Shaq Moore's joined, so another national team player. So I'll just say for us, like going this last Saturday night, it's a family outing.
That's right.
And how cool is that? Because then you get to create memories and things that our kids, I didn't grow up with a professional soccer team in Memphis. Now we have one here, and they're good.
They're good. And it's like, the atmosphere at that stadium, like even if you're not like an avid soccer fan or even know what's going on, like that's how I felt the first time I walked out. I was like, that was incredible. There was even a soccer game going on during all that. Like it was crazy. The fans were nuts. It was loud. The atmosphere, the energy was just, I mean, it's different than anything else I'd been at a sporting event, especially in Nashville. It was really, really cool.
It's cool.
We had a great time with it. All right. So talk to me a little bit about how you like your podcast is fantastic, by the way. And I love the name of it, Finding Your Competitive Edge. Right. So like I went through I had a hard time taking the competitive edge that I had learned in sports and applying that to the business life. Yeah. Right. So talk to me a little bit about your transition and what you learned, especially not just in the business transition, but into leadership.
So if I could unpack all 100+ episodes now, what I've learned about everybody that's come on, they all have a competitive edge, whether they realize it or not. Most of them do realize it because that's why they're successful and we have them on. Whether you're an athlete or you are not, you have a competitive edge. It usually comes from your story of resiliency. What have you overcome in your life that's uniquely you, that no matter what, you go, you know what? I'm not going to stay on the ground. I'm going to get back up. And you've been knocked down in your life. So think back to that moment. What was it that drove you to get back up? Because at some point that pain moves you into, you have to take action forward. And I believe sharing these stories, what we've learned is everybody's got a similar story. It's a little bit different, but we start to realize we're a lot more alike.
That's right.
And what we're doing is inspiring people to go, let's help you unlock your keys to success in this. No matter where you've been, where you are, you want to move forward. And we share the stories to not only inspire people, but give you the tools. Like, what did they do when they were knocked down?
That's right.
How did they find their competitive edge? And I love this. This is from Rory Vaden and AJ, right? Is now how do we use that gift that you've been given to serve other people?
Wow.
That's the real gold that we want to share.
Income is the outcome, not the objective, right?
That's right.
So if you want to make more money, you need to find ways to help more people.
Amen.
Solve more problems. I like it. Folks. We are with Brian Covey. BrianCovey.com has links to all the stuff that he's got going on. He's the executive vice president of Revolution Mortgage. You can check them out at revolutionmortgage.com. His Instagram is @BrianCovey. Right. So, we got, like I say, we got lots and lots to talk about. So before I get even into the more of the gold that I'm bringing you, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about this guy. He's got 3 kids, right? So I got 2, and I can tell you, like we can still do man-to-man defense if we need to, right? You guys you're outnumbered, so you got to run the zone. But you got a wife, 3 kids. Like folks, the reason that you're successful is because of your family. It's not, they're not the reason you can't be successful, right? You can have it all and you can do it all.
That's right.
My family, you met my wife. She's in the back there. My son's with me on a lot of things that we do. And I'm sure my daughter will as well when she gets a little bit older. But my family is a part of my everyday life, just like the business world is, right? So how have you been able to continue to grow and do what you're doing, yet still be there for your family like you are?
I'll say my wife is phenomenal. Shout out to Nicole. And she'll say this is finding the right partner is number one. And I tell people is that for us, we've grown together, which I think is the key of when we've been married 20 years, it'll be 21 years this August. And what I've learned is we've fallen in love with travel. We've fallen in love with our kids, but we've never forgotten about our relationship comes first.
That's
right. You know, both of us have a faith base. So for us, that's important. Our relationship with God was the center. I mean, it's the framework and the foundation. So building from that, I think has allowed us to endure the struggles. Because let's be real. The reality is over 20 years, you're going to have a lot of fights. You're going to have some times that you don't like each other.
That's right.
You always love each other. We started our relationship. And this was a great tip from one of our pastors is we don't really talk about the D word. We don't go into ever separating from each other. This was never an option for us. And so we came in with those expectations. And I'll tell you, through the tough seasons, man, you got to have common goals and expectations for where you want to go as parents in your relationship. And I tell you, it isn't perfect. But you know what I love every day is I wake up and I know God designed her for me and me for her, right? And there's this and I go back to growing together, sharing your hopes and dreams. And I tell this story. 2 years ago, I tore my bicep. Working out, playing soccer, just a couple of things happened and ends up tearing. For about 3 months, I was slowed down. And for a guy that runs at 100 miles an hour, you'll probably relate, and you're just going, we were walking every day. And what a beautiful time in that season. And she told me, she goes, man, that was such a blessing. You slowed down, and we got to walk every day because I couldn't really do anything else as my arms, healing up. And I remember those are the little things.
That's right.
Traveling together, going on walks together, sharing your hopes and dreams, what's happened in your week, being a great listener. And I go back to, it's never going to be perfect. But if you show up every day with the right intentions, man, your marriage can grow, and it can be the most beautiful thing, because what I found, there's no success in business without success at home.
Amen to that. My buddy Andy Elliott tells a story about how, when he finally achieved something that he felt was recognizable in the auto industry, went home and basically Coach Burt said the same thing. He was working with a couple, and the family felt like all they got left was the crumbs that were left over from that, right? So, my wife and I take walks all the time with our daughter. That's one of her favorite things to do, is ride in our little pink car that we push and go for walks. And we have some of our, we have solved a lot of our, not problems, but things that we need to solve to move forward in the future. We designed a whole 6-figure budget on an addition on our home on walks, on those walks around the neighborhood with our daughter, and just with her sunglasses on, just looking around in her little snacks, Sure. So those can be very productive times, but they are, there's something that just feels better when you've had that time with those people. Crumbs, your family deserves better.
I've heard that one, and I have redesigned over the last 5 years, even being more intentional, because now with our 7-year-old and our daughter just turned 16, realizing, okay, there's a lot of dynamics happening here.
Yeah.
And if we don't get intentional about our time and where we are, even little things like, I joked to my daughter, I said, the thing I'm going to miss the most about you driving, which is a blessing because it's going to help us get people where they need to go and get her places, is that 30-minute car ride to and from soccer. And if you're intentional, you don't have your phone out, you're not zoning out, check in on the people you care about. And that 30 minutes could be the highlight of my day, and I get to know what's happening in her life.
That's right.
The same's true for your spouse, right?
That's right.
Don't
At the end of the day, all your kids really want is your time.
That's it.
And I can promise you, all I want is my wife's time.
Right.
Maybe a little more, but it all starts with the time.
That's right.
All right. So to achieve what you have achieved in the as far as the revenue goes, 4 generations. It's not something there's 24 hours in a day. We all get the same 24. There's only so much you can do at that time before you have to start to replicate yourself in others. Yeah. So, and you have obviously mastered attracting versus recruiting your teams, right? So talk to me about the difference between the two, because recruiting, that's a term that get used a lot, even especially in college sports, big time, right? They're recruiting, but boy, if you're attracting them, that's a lot different.
So this was a huge shift in my life, and I struggled. Really, this was birthed out of a place of, I was recruiting. I was out cold calling people. I was trying to sell them on why they need to join. I was telling them all the reasons they need to join. And what I was finding is, 1, I was hiring some of the wrong people.
Yeah.
2, I would bring them on. There were not really good expectations set on their end or my end. And so what you have then is a relationship that doesn't function correctly, because you got the wrong people pulling your time that you didn't really want in the beginning, but you feel forced to recruit and fill spots. Well, I moved into this attractive leadership model, which meant I started showing up on social, started telling people what I believe. We started sharing our wins, which started to attract people like us. They go, I'm a former college athlete, or I relate to a competitive culture. I relate to a culture that is driven. And they started to see what we did, and they're like, I'm attracted to it. So now our conversations already got better.
Right.
I attracted better people. Now what you want to do through that is share what you believe. You're uniquely you. Your stories, your results, your wins, that's going to attract people. We weren't selling anything.
That's right.
And then I slowed down to listen. What was their dream? Do they fit the team? And you shift the narrative of, do they fit? Am I going to invite them to join versus hiring people? You got recruiting and hiring. I will just tell you, that's a dead end street. Yeah. You might get it right half the time, but the other half, it's probably why you're dealing with people you don't want on your team today. If you start to attract the right people, you're going to realize, wow, we're already aligned up on so many things that matter. Because when things hit the fan and things don't work, you better make sure you have alignment on your core values and your vision.
Man.
So we shifted to that. I'll tell you, what's been amazing, in the 90 days moving to a new company, and now it's a little bit over 4 months, is we've already added close to $2 billion in annual mortgage production.
Wow.
Which I look and go, I remember that B number, man, if I could ever get to $1 billion, if I could ever get there. And I will say this, I hired a coach to help me with this. And I was in enough pain to where I was like, I'm just sick and tired of hiring the wrong people and not having the results I want. And I'm in this revolving door and this roller coaster of emotions. I was like, it's got to be different. It's got to be better. And so now leading the charge that way, it's attracted people I never would have had in my life.
I love that. I love that. So the whole time you're doing this, you are, and by the way, you said something about the core values of like making sure that everybody's on the same page with that, right? That's probably one of the most common mistakes that's done right in stage one, right in the beginning, and everybody has to learn it, right? And the CEO of U.S. Health Group, Troy McQuaig, like we never heard him say a word if it didn't talk about the core principles in which the company was founded and how every decision that they make on a daily basis has to be in line with those core principles, right? So we do the same things here. The team knows if you have an idea and you're excited about it, if it doesn't line up with the core principles, don't bring it. And when it does, we're probably going to do it, right? So that's their job, is to figure out how it does line up with the core principles, and then the rest will be history, and it's going to be a great experience for everybody.
That's huge. And so we have one of our core values is collaboration, and we talk about this a lot. Is we want you to bring the ideas there. We're not bringing ideas to not get solved, because ideas without execution, it's just ideas again, right? And so we've shared that as like, how do you really define some of these core values? So I would recommend anybody that's doing this, don't just have a word. You need to go into it, because you and I might describe loyalty different.
That's right.
Right? And so you want to dig into that and share that as a leader and as an EVP and our CEO. We share these things often. And we share them in examples of when somebody does something really well. Hey, I love how you collaborated with this team member over there. You guys got that solved because you collaborated. That's what we want to see. That's serving our customer. That's delivering excellence in the market.
Man, that is fantastic. All right, so when it comes to leveling up with proximity to winners at the next level, all right? So you're building these teams. They're trying to level up. You're also always trying to level up and do the same and grow yourself, right? So talk to me a little bit about that, how that journey is for you.
So I learned this valuable lesson that as I look back over the last several years, my proximity to certain people has been the absolute breakthrough and catalyst to that next version of me that I was trying to get to. I want to be better here at home. I want to be better in business. I want to attract the right people in my business. Now I have multiple businesses. How do I manage all of those? How do I delegate better? All of this. And what I actually took from this, Nick, was this proximity actually is going to fuel your purpose. So proximity is going to fuel your purpose, because when I'm around other people, they're going to speak into me and they're going to ignite my dreams. I'm going to share those. So I always tell everybody, when you're talking about your dreams and where you want to go, you're around the right people. When you're talking about other people or things that you want to get, like that's not where it's at. So proximity is going to fuel your purpose. And I started to get into rooms. I started to join masterminds.
Yeah.
Think and Grow Rich. Like it all stems from there. You get around the right people.
That's right. And
you start to realize they can help me solve a problem. I can help them solve a problem. And you're better when you're around great people. And I started to realize, and what get input to us, right? Whatever the input is, podcasts, books we read, people we're around, the pastors we listen to, all this stuff, that's going to be what our output is around our team members. And so I wanted the best to be around my kids, the best around the team. And so I started to be intentional about who I was surrounding myself with, what podcasts I started to listen to, what books I read. And then from there, I mean, how many times have you had a conversation as a result of, I just read this, I just listened to this.
Every day.
And so why not jump into the matrix, I call it, figure that out and go, you know what, my conversations are going to be better because I've been a student and I've learned. And so that's where I say proximity to the right people will absolutely change your trajectory and it'll accelerate your growth. In the last 5 years, I look back, I'm like, man, if I could have done that 10 years ago, I'd be in a different spot. So now I'm just focused on moving forward.
Well, literally, I go back. I'm always trying to get better at everything that we do. So after we're done today, I'm going to ask you for feedback. Like, what could I have done better, right? So, what I can promise everybody is that, like, when I'm interviewing folks like you today, nobody's paying more attention than I am right now, right? And I'm hearing everything that you're saying. However, when I go back later and listen to the episode just like everybody else does when it's done, I hear things that I didn't hear the first time and the second time and the third time, right? So I'm constantly going back and re-listening, rereading, and I'm always getting new content, new ideas, new messages from things that I've already heard over and over again, right? So it's, so if you get a little time with somebody, whether it be you're listening to them speak on stage or whatever, there was an analogy about iron and wood. We've all heard iron sharpens iron and so on and so forth. But iron is used to chop wood, at least in the form of an axe, right? But if you don't go back and sharpen that axe and get some iron on iron, and you just keep on hitting that wood, all you end up with is dull iron and damaged wood, right?
Yeah.
Feeding those things. So you go and you hear somebody speak, or you go to a mastermind. What are some of the things that you do to keep getting more knowledge from the time you invested into that person, right? Just like I go back and listen to episodes over and over again.
Yeah, and I love that because I do the same with my podcast. And there's things that come out. And I will say that's been one is listening to podcasts several times. There's some that land. And I heard it said, I'd be more impressed and I actually believe we'll gather more information on the book that you've read 5 times versus you telling me you just read 5 books. Because the reality is you might read 5 different books, but how much did you retain?
That's right.
Unless you're superhuman and you can retain all of it, I don't. I have to reread books. I have to re-listen to podcasts. So that'd be one. Number 2, what I learned is I was being cheap. What I mean by that is I was going to the masterminds and I would pay the entry-level ticket and I got the entry-level experience.
That's right.
And so every time what I said is, okay, I'm going to pick the right ones. I'm going to pick the ones that I'm going to go to, but I'm going to upgrade all the way. I'm going to get full access. I'm going to get time with people because what I learned from that investment, those thousands of dollars that you spend to actually get proximity, through one relationship that you're going to make while you're there, that one piece of information, that one problem solved, that's where you need to upgrade.
Yeah.
And the third one is be consistent. A lot of people think I'm going to go to one mastermind this year, one, over 3 years. You got to be consistent. What I learned is by showing up over and over, a lot of these similar crowds are at the same spots.
That's right.
So they see you, they go, hold on, this guy's serious.
Yes.
And what I started to realize is the people that just showed up versus the people that were there to actually connect. And what I would tag into that, the last one is you're probably not connecting up with a lot of the speakers. A lot of people want to go in, they want to meet the speakers, they want to do that. That's cool. Get your picture, do all that, spend some time. You need to look around to your left and your right, your front and your back. You need to figure out who are those people. Because some of those, Nick, have been the people that now we've done business deals with.
That's right.
They've joined our team and we overlook it because we want the celebrity. We want the person on stage. And so I would look around you because those people have invested, especially in the VIP section. I'll just tell you, again, another hack there.
That's right.
That's where I've found significant growth and breakthrough.
And one of my favorite quotes from brand builders, and I might botch it here, I'm going to read it a little bit, but at the end of the day, they say, in life, you're most qualified to help the person that you used to be, right? So, and that's where you're going to find them, those people, is at those summits or those conferences, right? Yeah. They're there. They're hungry. They're reaching out. So becoming great with skills and sales, while we're talking about consistency, right? So when I first got into insurance, I was almost a little bit ashamed of it. I don't know why. I guess it's because it wasn't what I grew up to be. I felt like I'd failed to do that. But I learned a lot about sales and marketing. And at the end of the day, if you learn the skill set of sales, you'll always be able to make money, or at least you'll always have access to good job interviews and maybe a good position, right? So talk to me a little bit about what were some things that you did to become, what were some of the greatest lessons you learned that you're applying to your team now?
So to make you feel better. So you talked about insurance. So I started at Wells Fargo Financial. It was in a strip center. I'll never forget, next to a Chinese buffet and a pizza place. So you hear the commercials today.
Hold on, I never use this.
Yeah, right? So I'll just say that's where your manager would take you to lunch, right? So this is where the debriefs and the feedback. But if you watch commercials about furniture financing, the 0%, the no payments for 5 years, all that stuff, that was us. Gotcha. I was actually the person. So you talk about super sexy, right? Working in a strip center, dressing up in suit and tie every day, cold calling people. We're helping people finance furniture.
Right.
That is not how I envisioned my sales career going. But I will say this. What I learned is by cold calling over 50 to 100 people a day. Yeah. And our job was to help get them another product. How do we get them a credit card? How do we get them potentially the biggest product for us was mortgage debt consolidation because they had auto loans, credit cards, this furniture they're financing. Yeah. So we had to very quickly, 20 years old, like 25 in that time, figure out how to connect with people that are typically twice our age or close to it.
That's right.
How do you help them and give them advice when they're looking at you going, son, you have no experience. So you have to learn how to connect with people quickly on the phone. We had to learn how to follow up with people, build relationships because they would come in, but a lot of it was on the phone. So I learned phone sales before I ever learned in person. And then I moved into mortgage, and that's where we learned. We had high performance sales is what we called it. We went through everything from pre-call planning, looking people up before you meet them. We went through overcoming objections. We went through how do you actually listen and figure out what do they want? Right. Because most people don't do those things. So I'll say I was blessed, and then I got to teach those and move through them. And so I've been a constant learner of sales. What I say is, look, I was still selling when I was in the soccer field. I'm selling people why they need to play hard that day.
That's right.
Get motivated. And so I look at that today, and look, I got 3 kids. Almost every day there's a sale made.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to make sure we win as many of those as we can, right? Because we want our kids to perform and to be great. And
that's right.
Those lessons. And now I would say this, I'm always My dad was a psychologist. I'm always learning psychology of people, because when you can get to know people, they still say over 80% is body language, your tone, the inflection, how you show up. My energy introduces me before I even move into any of that sale. And if people can get that right, what I've learned by showing up happy, excited, connecting with people, actually genuinely caring about them,
Yeah.
sales becomes fun. Now I'm helping people solve problems.
That's right. That's right. The you know, if you want to, like, I don't know, if you want to take up golf, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go find like a driving range and take a bunch of swings and just hit balls, right?
Right.
And when it comes to sales, those telephone sales are the fastest. That's the fastest way to get swings in a day, right? The most amount of swings you can. If you're person to person, you have to get to those people.
That's right.
When I first started in insurance, it was before all the internet and cold calling the thing, so it was like everything was. Like I spent a lot of time on the road every day. Like 3 or 4 appointments is all you could fit in based on where geographically everybody went. And, you know, sometimes an hour, 2 hour drive to go sit in somebody's living room on their turf, which was always an away game. It was always an away game. And then once we got into the world of telephone sales, I guess they don't say telephone anymore. I just aged myself. Phone sales.
That's right.
It's boy, it was my skills developed and sharpened so fast because of all the shots and how much learning I got from it. Right. And it was now it's harder.
Yeah.
It's real hard, especially if that person didn't know you're going to be calling when you called them.
People are adverse to it now, right?
That's right.
I think about the reps you get in, and you're right. You've got to be willing to put in reps. And the one thing we took away was if you're willing to role play and be uncomfortable. We did it in sports, right? You would go through and we'd actually do shadow drills like there was an opponent, but there wasn't. You've got to be willing to put in the reps.
And you'd enter squad. You'd play your teammates.
That's right. You're putting reps in before the game. So why is it any different today?
That's right.
It's not.
It shouldn't be. And most athletes, you should know that, man. You know what I mean? That's something that you should embrace for sure. Nobody's undefeated in this life, right? So and you mentioned it before, your ability to what you can take and continue to get up and all those things. So like we, you know, with Coach and Ethan's baseball team, we always say you win or you learn, right? You don't losing is a choice, but if you learn something from the scoreboard, which was a loss at that time, then you can turn it into a future win. Turning adversity into lessons and fuel. What you got for me on that one?
Man, we've all had those. My first biggest heartbreak, I would say, is when I made it into the national team camp and then got cut right before the final team was selected. And I was on the verge of quitting. I was like, I'm done, man. You know, you get to where you want to be and you don't make it to that final. And we have these goals and we have things. And then considering that to be a failure, looking back now, was so immature.
Right.
Like I look at that and go, how many people would have liked to have been part of that?
Absolutely.
In the moment, we think it's the worst thing ever. We don't have perspective at that age. But I will say that lesson that was taught to me later as I went through, and I lost my job in the 07, basically into the 08 crash when I'm in mortgage and housing. And so anybody that knows, like you can do the math if you listen to how old my kids were, that's when we had our first 2 kids, 07, 08.
Let's stay there for a second. Like that's like, so all this success that we've been describing and talking about, like, was through the largest crisis that we can remember, at least in our lifetime, right?
That's
so,
right.
Like, how were you able to transition through that and take a whole lot of bad and basically turn it into good? You know.
Well, I don't quit. I think that's the one thing that I've just been competitive. And I remember when I first found out my job was getting eliminated during the crash. It's like, I got 2 kids at home. That's my first. And actually, our second, our son was being born. And so you remember August is when everything hit the fan in 08. And Davis was born in November. And I remember when my job got eliminated, I was like, what can I do? And I started calling people, asking people, what can I do? And people were reaching out, hey, we're so sorry, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't have time to be sorry.
Yeah.
Like I need a job to provide for my family. And again, I was faced with that choice of, man, do I get out of the business? Do I got to do something else? And I think for all of us, I was willing to do whatever it took. I was willing to go back and play soccer if I had to. You know what I mean? Like we were going to have food on the table. We were going to figure this stuff out.
That's right.
And I remember calling in one of my mentors. I said, what do you have an issue? Like, what are your problems? Like, what could I do? What can I help? He goes, well, we got this other market. We were living in Tampa. He's like, we got this market in the Panhandle that needs help. I need you go basically fire about half the staff. I need you to close offices and just kind of clean it up for me. So imagine being the guy that comes in and I'm just letting everybody go. I just got let go. So I know how crappy that is.
Yeah.
And I think for any of us,
oh my God,
the lesson learned is, I think the lesson was given to me before was how I felt I was able to empathize and be there with those people and say, hey man, I just went through this as well. Like, I don't know what it's gonna look like for you, but here's what I did through it, and letting people go with compassion I think I was set up.
Helping the person
help
that you
them.
used to be.
See how that connects?
Yeah.
And I remember just thinking, I was like, man, God, like what do you got for me here? Because
Yeah.
we're there, and then the door opened. We actually were able to move here in about 6 months to Middle Tennessee, where more of our family was. We had no family there. And that lesson taught me is like, no matter what happens, it's how you respond to it. And it sounds cliche, but let's be real. If you're not willing to pick up the phone and ask somebody for help, you're not really willing to make a change.
We say all the time, I tell Ethan's baseball team, winners anticipate, losers react, but, like leaders respond.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So that response is killer. And I can't, honestly, man, that wasn't something you probably look forward to doing
No.
on a daily basis. But you were able to take an empathetic role. And, I don't know. There might be something to say, I've been let go by quite a few guys, but that guy just did it better than everybody else.
And you just want to be the person that can actually have a conversation and treat them like a human being.
That's right.
Because how many times have we had people just come in, they're so cold, and they follow the HR textbook.
Yeah.
And I learned through that, and through my career now, 22 years, is obviously I've had to let people go.
Yeah.
And so learning those lessons early is like, man, I screwed that one up.
Right.
That didn't go well. How do you deal when somebody gets hostile or emotional?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're doing somebody's crying right in front of you.
That's right.
You learn lessons.
It's rough
on the battlefield.
Man. It's rough. Absolutely. Any other lessons that you would have learned from sports? I mean, like, look, in the world of baseball, I think I read a statistic the other day. I don't know how true it is, but it's close, that only 7% of all high school players go to play at college, and it's less than 1% that go past that, right? Yeah. So for me, the gap between high school and college was big. But from college to even just like middle minor league systems, incredible. And you mentioned something before, like when I was a player, I've said this before, I was just happy to be there.
Yeah.
I didn't treat it like the business that it was, and quite frankly, nothing again. Like I played with some amazing individuals, first class athletes. These dudes were awesome, but I look back and like I could have been so much more when I did that. I didn't have the mindset. Mm-hmm. I didn't know. I was just happy to be there. I wasn't clear enough with my goal on the end destination. I didn't say I want to play this position for this team in the major leagues. I just wanted to play professionally.
Right.
And guess what? That's what I achieved, and that's how far I went. So, as you got into the higher echelons of soccer, what were some of the more advanced lessons that you learned that most people, like even soccer players, would be like, oh, I didn't, I finished my career and didn't get that.
Yeah. So you touched on something, mindset. And I was very blessed that my dad being a psychologist, learning the power of visualization. I would tell you, you're very right. And I just saw this last night at my son's. He's going into high school next year, right? So they're going through the stats with football. And he's going to play in the football team, the freshman team. And they're talking about the 7%. And then the less than 1% move on after that. What I realized is everybody's strong and fast when you get to the pro levels. They
That's
just
right.
are.
That's right.
Everybody has a great touch. And we talk about these fundamentals. Their fundamentals are just a little bit better than everybody else. Their first touch, for example, in soccer. But what I found the biggest separator, most people miss, their mental game. Their ability to anticipate. Goalkeepers especially. What I tell you, if you watch the best goalkeepers, and obviously that's the position I studied and I played, is what I realized is it wasn't about being strong and fast. That helps you. No doubt it helps you. But the reality was for me, I had to study so much of the other. That's right. How do I play out of the back? How do I recognize pressure? How do I organize my team as a communicator on the field to make sure, and my coach would always say the best shot, Covey, is the one that you prevent before it happens.
Well, so as the goalkeeper, as the catcher on a baseball team, I was the only person that could see the whole entire field from my position, right? So I was the only one that didn't have my back turned to something.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So very similar for you, right?
Well, you're the on-field coach. And they would always say you had to become a leader very quickly because what I learned is, yes, you got to make shots, stop, like save the ball, do all that stuff, but you need to be able to read plays. Am I going to come out for this high ball? Am I going to come out on this breakaway? How am I going to organize my team? Even this last weekend, I'm playing, over 40 league and all this fun stuff. What I realize is when people get tired, if you can direct them and say, hey, Nick, on your right shoulder, let's get a little closer to number 10. You're like, oh, yeah, man, I got him. You're preventing things from happening. That's what great leaders do today. And I think people miss that as a pro. The pros are really working on the things that are unseen, off the ball, the communication, and you were able to see a play before it happens.
That's right.
I think about the Tom Brady's and the Peyton Mannings, right? I go back to football, people be able to relate to them probably really well. They probably were not the best athletes.
That's
even
for
in their
sure.
prime. Let's be real.
We could all agree.
We could all agree. But what I loved about those guys and I would study is their mental locked in preparation. That when they were on the field, they saw things that nobody else saw before they happened. So I would say that was the difference I saw. The greats that I was around, it was the preparation before, during the game, and after. They were always working to get better. Always.
That's right. That is right. Well, like, we're gonna, as we get into some of the other stuff that you got going on, you make a lot of your decisions based on 3 C's. Is that correct?
I do.
All right. So what are those 3 C's? How did you come up with them? Let's talk about how to, so the first thing I want to talk about on those 3 C's is your podcast, which is phenomenal because like a lot of people ask me a lot, why do you do it? Right. And for me, my podcast is by far the sharpest tool in my tool belt for scaling and growing anything.
Yeah.
Right. So, all right. So talk to me about let's identify your 3 C's. I'm going to be taking notes and then let's apply those to the things you're doing.
Oh, I love it. Which 3 C's did we give you?
I've got clarify, consider, and choose.
Ooh, that 3 C's. Okay. So we've got another one we just released. I like this one. So I'm going to go back through the clarify, consider, and choose. There's actually a model that my coach had taught me. And so when we clarify our goals, for a lot of us, I struggled with defining success. Okay. I don't know if anybody feels that way. It's because I wasn't clarifying my goals to a deep enough level. I didn't have clarity. Like I may want to make X amount of dollars, but I wasn't clear on why I wanted to be there, what was happening there. And what that leads you into after that is if you can't clarify it and you don't know what it is and it's not crystal clear, you're not really moving towards that. I mean, it's like you're driving somewhere and you're like, yeah, I know I'm going to get there at some point, but I don't really know the exact directions, the turn by turn. You need turn by turn directions as you go through your goals. So when we were breaking this down, clarify was step 1. I wasn't even able to clarify what success looked like or my goals. So we started creating this project design, breaking them all down where I could clarify those for people. Now you want to move into consider. There are options that we all every day get to consider. You're probably given an option today. Do I do the podcast? Do I go out and take this meeting? All these every day.
That's right.
What I've realized in winners, they are actually looking at that and considering, is this what I need to do now? Because there's things that need to wait. And what I've learned, there's people that are very rigid on their schedule. I started to look at this and said, I need to be adaptable. In a day, things are going to change.
That's right.
Where do I need to go? Well, I know I need to go here because my priorities were already clarified in step 1. So now I'm considering, so in alignment, your decisions need to be aligned with your priorities.
Dude, that's a superpower. They say that as a catcher, like I'll go ahead and simulate a whole thing. Well, if we book him this and all the things that can happen. Well, what if they cancel or they don't or they show up early or they're going to be late? What happen? How does that affect the next thing? We walked into a game where there was a scouting report for the entire game, but each player in the lineup had a scouting report for how we needed to pitch them. But then the situation in which they're hitting in, there was all these other scouting reports based on that. And my ability to call a game is I could operate in that. I could do that. I could play the game. I could respond to any situation that was thrown at me, and I was reading every single thing that happened, all the way down to how a guy took a pitch.
Right.
That told me everything I needed to know is how he took a pitch. Oh, I got him. Now I know all he's got to do is execute this, and it's game over. So as a goalkeeper, like it's the same type stuff, right? Your ability to pivot, and like you just said, consider all the things that are going to come from that. Like again, I think if you're too rigid, there has to be a certain amount of flex.
Yeah.
In anything.
Well, we were taught the opposite, right? Like you had this rigid schedule, you have these time blocks that just never move. And what I've realized is the most successful people actually move things around quite often. So my Sunday planning of how I schedule my week, every day I come in and re-review it. And then through that day, I'm going to move things in. We've all talked about like the urgent box and all the things there, but the reality is if you're not flexible and you're not able to kind of flex into that and go, this needs to happen now, I'm going to take control of it or I'm going to delegate it out. That's how you get more done. So that'll move you through. The last one's the one that I think people struggle with. Deciding something, and Coach Burt says this a lot, when you decide, you're going to kill off something. We all want to decide and choose multiple options, right? A, B, and C.
Yeah.
You're not choosing all of them right now. The reality is when you go through that and you clarify and you consider, the choose is where people struggle. I see them get in that analysis by paralysis. They get frozen. They don't make a decision to move forward. Winners.
Isn't that why everybody, like guys get nervous before they get married?
They do. Think about it. Before a game too, people are like, they get nervous. Same thing when they get married. People go into a meeting. They go into a sales presentation. They're like, make the decision, commit to it, and you move forward. So when you choose this, what I love is you're choosing, you're moving forward. There is no looking back. If I choose that I'm going to go work out in the morning at 6 a.m., there is no more selection process when I wake up. It is, I have chosen that I'm going to do this at 6 a.m. When I'm going with my daughter tonight to her soccer practice, kicking around my son, I have chosen that is what's going to happen. That is what is going to happen. I've chosen. because people want to waffle, right? We all get stuck in that.
Yeah.
I find myself like, well, what if? No, not what if. I've clarified my goals. I've considered the alternatives of what's going to be there. I've got my priorities in line. Now I've chosen what I'm going to do. That is where people get stuck, and they look up and go, man, I really didn't get much done today.
Yeah.
They might get stuck in that choosing section.
So is it, when they get stuck, do you think it's because they're like, I know going off the marriage thing, like every guy's like, is this really like the last girl that I'm ever going to experience anything with? Is this really the last one? Yeah. A lot of times the greatest are just really good choice makers, like you're talking about, right? So what are some of the things that tricks you use to eliminate maybe some doubt and when you're making those choices?
So what I've realized is, when I make a choice, usually my first choice is the best choice. It just, if you look at probability and statistically, that's usually what it is, because I've already looked at it. I know my alignment there and my priorities. And I think where people get stuck is the ability to make a choice and make a decision and realize when I get in that, just like in a game, I'm going to need to adapt. I'm going to have to adjust. I don't have to execute.
I like that.
And that's where I shifted my entire framework. Was the perfect decision doesn't always exist. But if I make a decision, I've committed to it, I'm going to go. And then when I get in that, things will change. So think about, for most people listening, right? They're probably into sales presentations, whatever they're doing today. The reality is when you make a choice and you say, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go to this meeting. I'm going to go speak here. When you get there, it's going to play out differently than you probably had in your head.
Boom.
Can you adapt? Can you adjust? Can you execute the plan on the fly? The best can.
That's right.
And if you're not there, that's where you need to do the off the field preparation.
That's
right. That's where I moved into, is just be certain about your decision, then move into it and realize you're equipped to maneuver through anything that's thrown at you.
All right. So is there another set of C's? I mean, dude, there's so many amazing acronyms that we use all the time. My favorite one that we're using right now for Ethan's ball team is they got to commit, they got to focus, they got to finish.
Yeah.
I'm big on, I hate quitting, but finishing and quitting look and smell a lot alike, but I'm a big finisher, not a big quitter, right?
Yeah.
In choosing, you can't finish anything without those choices. What are the other C's?
So we talk about commitment with our team and with my kids. I talk about that quite a bit. And I think it's one of the core values of defining what commitment looks like. And commitment to me is continuing to do what you said you were going to do long after your feelings have swayed. I mean, it's as simple as in the morning workout that you say, I'm going to go do this, or I'm going to make 10 calls this morning.
Yeah.
I'm going to go here. Your feelings, man, they're going to lie to you.
That's right.
They are always going to tell you, here's the easier path, Brian. This is going to be easier for you. So commitment, we share that with our kids. We're showing up to practice early. We're staying late if we can.
Yeah.
And we're going to commit, and we're going to show up and be there. The second one for us is coachability. And that's a skill and a core value I want to give my kids, is what I found: the best people are always coachable.
I've always heard that the greatest, the best leaders were once the best followers, and that's proven from Jesus's first disciples, right?
1,000%. And I think they still are. And this is where a lot of leaders I see get stuck, is they were once coachable. They were once a student. They were once learning at a fast pace, and they stopped.
Yeah.
And they're like, man, why am I stuck? Why am I on this plateau? Well, go back and look. What have you done lately to really put fuel on your growth? And that's where the coachability, to me, I go back to what I'd said earlier, Nick, is the people that are willing to take input from others and they can filter through it. That's right. Anybody. Because what I've learned is I may be coaching somebody in a session, I may be mentoring them, but after that, if I reflect back, there's things that I can learn from that. Did I show up? How did I respond to that? How did I go through that? So those would be those two. The last one for me is consistency. What I've learned in my life is a lot of us want the one-hit wonder. We want the grand slam, right? We want to show up and be the person that scores the game-winning goal in soccer. We want to make that PK save. But life is actually just a series of wins that we've just stacked up every day.
That's right.
And so
momentum.
When I was thinking about these 3 C's, I was thinking about those as the consistency. When I go back in the seasons of my biggest growth, was consistency doing the same thing. And I like to do 90 to 100-day sprints. This just works well for my brain. And then I break it down in a week, break it down into a day. And you can look back and go, with that thought process, you're going to move forward. I even broke it down at one point. I'll tell you, I was putting 10 minutes a day because I was struggling with slowing my brain down.
Yep.
Something for me is I like to go. I like to be on hyperdrive.
Yep.
10 minutes a day, just slow down, put your phone down, do nothing, just be calm in your own thoughts. Most people can't do that for 10 minutes.
Yes.
And it was a struggle for me, well, I need to go do this, I need to go do that. And the whole goal of that exercise was just slowing down. For you, that might be reading a book for 10 minutes. It might be going for a walk for 10 minutes. It might be calling a loved one for 10 minutes. Whatever that 10 minutes is, if you start incorporating that in, you start building habits. So that's how you move forward. If you're struggling today, that's a legitimate tactical way that you can start. Everybody has 10 minutes a day.
That's right.
Let's be real. If you don't have 10 minutes a day, you don't have a life.
That's right.
Like you gotta find time for what matters.
That's right. That's right. Well, man, like, the racking up the wins, the momentum is everything. A lot of every single person on planet Earth is consistent. They may just be consistently inconsistent.
That's it.
Right? Like, so it's all, they have momentum. And, at the end of the day, like wherever you are at in your life right now is a direct, like there's a math equation of all the choices plus the next choice, plus the next choice, plus the next choice got you to where you're at right then. And one of the things that, my son, I'm pretty tough on him. You know what I mean? I expect great things from him. I hope I want him to expect great things from him because God put him here for a reason. He's got a lot of great gifts and he's extremely unique. Everybody is. So last night was a night where just for whatever reason, like it wasn't a great night of sleep. And both of us this morning talking, we both looked at each other and I was like, rough night last night. Yeah. And he goes, yeah, I'm not feeling my best today. I was like, me neither. And true story, it was like, dude, you want to change that? He was like, yeah. And I was like, watch this. I'm going to kill it today. I'm in a great mood right now. And he was like, okay. And I was like, that's it. I feel better right now. I promise. I just decided. I made a decision that I'm not tired today. I'm actually not. That was a feeling. It's not a fact.
Yeah.
And we changed it. And he was like, can I do that? And I was like, absolutely. If you believe. So that happened at the breakfast table this morning. And like, once I figured that out I started to control my thoughts.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was going in the direction of with those C's. I wanted to talk about your podcast, like how you did the podcast. Like writing a book's a big decision.
Yeah,
it's a big undertaking. I'm still making that decision for my first one right now. I'm just trying to figure out when we're gonna we've already kind of started some pre-production. Like when we're gonna start moving it forward quickly, right? So using those C's. Talk to me about your podcast. A lot of people, when I first launched my podcast, especially when I built the studio, a lot of people made fun of me over it.
Oh, let's be real.
You know what I'm saying?
The closest people to you a lot of times are the ones that go, why?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think you're going to bring to the table? Like, people just ask, like, aren't you the mortgage business? And I love that when I said, yeah, I am. Isn't that cool that we got a podcast too?
That's right.
And I was like, and I'm not going to do it about a bunch of mortgage stuff.
Yeah.
Because there's some people that do that and good for them. Mine was really birthed out of, I've had some cool people in my life and they've poured into me. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could share a conversation? And so it started with, and that was the name of the book, Conversations with Covey. It started with a podcast of, man, I'll bring cool guests on. And we're just going to share their story. We're going to have a conversation. Because I know when I leave and I talk to Nick for an hour, I leave feeling better. I learned something. And I go, what if we could share that with other people? How cool would that be? So that was where the genesis of it. And I clarified that, right? So you go through the C's. I clarified that I'm going to have people on. I even did a solo episode of what was Brian learning. And I would go through every week. What was I being coached on? What was I learning? And I had people that loved those. They're like, dude, the fact that you share what you're learning, like, that's right. You're still doing it. I go, man, I'm still doing it. Every week I've got my coach and we go through what we're learning. So I would give that to people. That's where the book came from. I actually realized, you know what? All these conversations have been pretty phenomenal. We picked the ones that people engage with the most, had the most activity on. I said, maybe people don't listen to a podcast. Maybe that's just not their jam. But I know a lot of people that read. What if we were to put together a book of the 12 best conversations and give them not only inspiration and hope of their story, give them some motivation of, okay, here's how you can move forward, but we gave them the tactics. What did these people do? When you're at rock bottom, you're facing one of our guests, I'll just tell you if you hadn't read the book, found out that he had a brain tumor. A dad, had kids, in his 40s.
Wow.
I mean, that hit home.
Yeah.
I was like, how would I respond to that? You start to think, how would I respond to this?
Yeah.
And we had guests that were on the Shark Tank and all these cool things. And I was like, the goal was, we're a lot alike. Listen to their story. Where are you in this? And in the end, the message was, no matter where you are, no matter where, God has a plan for you and he's given you gifts. You've now got to get in the game. You can win at life.
You, much like me, you use fitness as a way to drive yourself forward, right? So, after I was done playing, I didn't know anything about like nutrition, right? I've never really like not worked out. Not all my workouts in my from like 28 to like 38 or 39 were really good, and that was when my dad bod was at its finest. You know what I'm saying? I was about 40 pounds of weight that I no longer carry. I felt bad though. I felt bad. I felt bad physically. I felt bad mentally. I didn't like who I saw in the mirror. I hated putting on my favorite clothes. Didn't feel good on me because of the way they fit, because they weren't made for a guy that's belly was wider than his shoulders. Yeah. Right. So, how do you use fitness, to continue to drive you? Because that's a commitment in itself. And that's, for me, it's about an hour, 7 days a week of some form of thing that now obviously, I've learned I do it with my son. My wife and I walk with the daughter. So we've made it a family thing. But how do you use that to help drive your business?
Here's the truth I know is when I'm working out, when I go consistently, which I do now, I feel better. I mean, and we talk about feelings, not listening to those, but it's not just the feelings. I feel better, which means I have more confidence. I look better in the mirror. The clothes fit differently. I meet cool people because we do a class at Iron Tribe and all this stuff there. And I can go back to seasons of my life when I was a teenager and I was the most overweight that I've ever been. My basketball coach, I was playing AAU ball. I'll never forget, Dr. Snyder told me, Brian, if you don't slow down, if you don't get this cholesterol, you don't get all this stuff, like you're headed to diabetes, it's in your family, you are not healthy whatsoever. And I was wearing the 2 shirts to the pool. Yeah. I was as embarrassed as all it could be, right?
Yep.
And I remember getting overweight after our first 2 kids. So I know the feeling.
Yeah.
They'll be like, oh, Brian, you've always been fit. You've always done this. Oh, no. I can go back to where like depression because I was overweight, didn't feel good, felt like crap.
Absolutely.
And I can go back to even in the last few years when I would get off of my programming, when I wouldn't eat well. Yeah. I could tell I don't feel as good. So guess what? I want to feel my best. I want to perform everywhere.
That's right.
My best. And so what I realized is it's more than just working out and moving the weights. It's more than just showing up when you said you would show up. It's more than just the eating. This is who I am.
That's right.
It is part of my identity.
That's right.
And so I've been able to connect with people, and a lot of people miss this. The amount of relationships. You want to talk about the business side of this too. People miss this. My business decisions and what I do every day, I show up with more energy. My kids don't get the crumbs because I have energy to last through a day.
That's right.
And then I've made friends and connections that we do business with now because fitness is a universal language. I'll just tell you. Mm-hmm. And people respect, the one thing you cannot buy is a fit body.
That's right.
Like you can have all the surgery, you can do all the stuff, and all, but people recognize real. When you go in, you earn that. And so what I've learned is, here's the last part, dude. I would say, like, this is just me. I love to compete. I don't care who else is there. Like this morning, we're doing some deadlifts and push-ups and lunges and all this. And I'm like, I'm going to compete. In the first part of the workout, you would do as much as you could in 10 minutes. You rest for 2. Then you got to flip it all around, and you do that in 12 minutes. So it's like, can you continue it? And I love the challenge. I love to compete. So why not put that in my life? And it has become more than that because the last part I'll share with you, Nick, and you know this as a dad, is I got 3 kids looking at me. Mm-hmm. It's not what I tell them. I can tell them all day, you need to be fit. You need to work out. You need to run more. When they see their dad going and doing it.
Yeah.
You know how many times my boys that come out in the gym at our home?
That's right.
They're picking up a barbell with me. They're moving weights.
That's right.
I mean, to me, that's the gift I want to give them is they don't have to go through what I went through.
When my daughter was born, when we were at the age of 40, and that was all, my thing is I was like, like she ain't gonna have no old looking, like unfit daddy.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's going to be boys I got to scare away and all those things. Like, so like, my son got the young version of me. She's going to get the same, even though it was 11 years later. Yeah. So, and man, like, I was never a morning workout guy, even through the professional ranks. Like that was something I actually like do. I almost worked out always in the evenings. And, one of the things that I learned in sales and how to get things done, like one of my biggest pet peeves is like when things pile up on your to-do list or on your plate because you're not getting things off faster than you're putting things on. And this is actually a soundbite from the great Coach Burt. When a sales tactic is following up on your red zone first. Like, so the best football teams score the most points when they're in the red zone. And for me, so the first, like when I'm mapping out my day, like I like to do things in the morning that I'm going to get off my list the fastest. Yeah. And one of those things is working out. So I became a morning workout guy because there's nothing better. Like you just feel like you kick the day's butt, dude. Yeah. When you're done. That's right. That's right. When you get it out of the way. And nothing against the people that do it at night. Sometimes I have to do it at night, but it's not as good. And I don't feel as fulfilled as I did before. Are you a morning or an evening guy?
So I'm a morning guy. And what's funny is yesterday, my daughter was going to get her actual driving part of the test done, right?
That's crazy.
And so I know, it's totally weird. So I rearranged the schedule, did all that stuff, and I'm going at 2:00 in the afternoon. And you're right, it's just great workout.
Yeah.
but it just felt different.
Yeah.
And there is something about starting your day, going before everybody's up and going, and coming back and going, okay, cool. I'm gonna put the phone down. Let's get everybody moving. I like the morning. We did that in college soccer. Professional sports, though, it was later in the day.
That's right.
We didn't wake up early as much.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, and this isn't. I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this. So, 5 years from now, what are you working towards right now amongst the things that you do every day and that you're already known for? Like, are there any books in the future? I do know there's a masterclass coming.
Yeah.
Right. So, talk to me a little bit about the masterclass and some other things that you're working. What's the future look like for Brian?
This is exciting. So this was really birthed out of people asking, hey, Brian, we need help. And I've been mentoring people and coaching people on the side. And they said, especially in the mortgage business, real estate, insurance, all of that, like, will you help us and teach us? And something could be, man, how do you have a family and do this, and you're investing in, properties and all this stuff. And I said, well, why don't I just teach this stuff for free? And then we'll see out of that group who really wants more training, who wants more time. And so we're going to roll that out in May on the 17th and 19th. And I'm excited about it because, one, it was a challenge. I've been putting it off for a while, probably like a lot of us do. And then I started to follow my method there on the 3 C's.
That's
and I'm
right.
like, okay, now I've chosen to do it. Now I've got to move forward with that. So I'm super excited about that. But I'll tell you what I'm most excited about is, in the next few years, our kids are going to be going to college. And my wife and I are realizing, okay, we just celebrated 20 years. So in 5 years, it'll be 25 years. That's a big accomplishment. So
Congratulations.
dude, it's probably one of the biggest joys in my life because a lot of people don't get to experience that for various reasons, right? It happens. And so I look and go, the Brian at 40 and the Brian now at 45, what's possible? So I'll tell you what, I'm dreaming huge. Because what I know what's happened the last 5 years with intentional focus and bringing the right people in my life and just dreaming big, like crazy big. And just saying, what if? And what if?
Don't you feel like we're going into our highest earning years?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I believe it. And a lot of people, if you don't believe it, like you said with your son trying to change his state there, if you don't believe it, it's going to be hard. I believe it. Because I saw what happened the last 5 years. I've always surrounded myself with people I go, man, their best years were in those years.
Yeah.
So why can't it be me?
What is it, the soundbite that when Steve Harvey was on the set of one of his things, when he's like, if you feel like you only get bad men, you're right. If you feel like you don't have many friends, you're right. If you feel like you're gonna you're gonna lose some weight, you might, right? So it's like all those little decisions that you make. It's that voice in your head, being able to control that is incredibly powerful. What else? So the masterclass, any books, any other books in the future?
So we might. We're working on some ideas that we've been kicking around there. So I'm excited to take the podcast to the next level. We've been having some in-person guests, having some great people on there, and that's growing. You know this. 3 years into this, man, where it is and what I have learned, probably one of the most secret underground personal development tools.
Absolutely.
You don't have to have your own podcast, though. So for anybody out there, like, go be a guest.
That's
exactly
right.
what I'm doing today. Because after I listen to this again and I realize, I go, okay, man, I liked that. I didn't like that. I could have said that better. I wasn't prepared there. I could have been more prepared. Like, if you go back through, it is a personal development tool.
That's right.
I did not know that starting it. So I'll tell you what I'm probably the most excited about is my kids grow and all that. We've got our 7-year-old. Is my wife and I, we've committed to travel more.
Okay.
So that's been one of our things. And so even this year, we've probably traveled more in the first 3-4 months.
That's awesome.
We traveled all last year. Some of that's soccer, some of that's with the kids, some of that's just us going places. But I've realized, this stage, it happens to people in different timings, but life is not guaranteed. People talk about it. And it's
That's
like,
right.
What would I regret? I'd regret not traveling more. I'd regret not going and doing things. And it's one thing to go make a lot of money and to do all this stuff, but if you don't enjoy it along the way, and so that's where the intentional focus is man, let's win in the games we need to win in.
Yeah.
But let's also make sure that we're enjoying this life that God's given us while we're here and bless and just inspire as many people as we can.
Fantastic. And I got 2 fun questions for you as we get to the end, though. Leadership is like a word that gets misused a lot, in my opinion. All right. And man, like, one of the greatest compliments somebody can give you, if this was left, like what my name was on my tombstone and it just said a great leader on there. A great teammate would also be something. I think that's on, who's that on? Is that on, that's on Mickey Mantle's.
I think so.
On his plaque at Yankee Stadium. So attractive, like, what are some things that make an attractive leader, an attractive and effective leader?
Yeah, I think the attractive leader starts with you have to be that leader yourself. If you can't lead yourself.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, I've just yet to find somebody. Look, let's just cut to the chase. For a lot of us, we're like, man, I want to lead other people. And I hear that all the time. What you really mean is you want to manage other people, make some money off of them. Leaders actually serve other people. And so when you look at that and go, What are the needs I can serve? If you're looking for those, you're going to find them. Same as if you're looking for your team to where you want to beat them down and tell them all the things they should be doing and why you're not winning and you're upset. Well, you're going to find those too. And so I've chosen to be a leader that is not only positive, and positive doesn't mean that I'm always praising the team. Positive means I'm looking with positive intent, and I want to reinforce the behaviors I want to see. Positive could be, hey, Nick, I love what you did over here. I think you have more. I think you could do more. That kind of leader is the one, just like a coach, that you want to show up and compete for. And here's what I've learned. When the leader's not in the room, how's everybody performing?
That's right.
That's when you know you've made an impact. I want people to be able to think big, act big. And so I look at leadership today. If you're not growing, it's true. You are dying.
That's right.
One of my mentors said the other day is like, leaders are readers. And I will just say this. The more I read, the more books I've been grabbing, just going through that, the best leaders are always learning. And that's one of the ways you can do it.
Somebody told me one time that your boss is never going to pay enough money to live next door. But a good leader would teach you the skill set and provide you with an opportunity to live next door, right? Yeah. So, and I always like that. All right, so some fun questions that you don't know I'm going to ask. These are actually pretty easy, and you've probably answered them before. So, if you had your top 3 books for folks that have made a great impact on you that you would recommend to the listeners out there.
I go back to Think and Grow Rich.
Yep,
that was a big one. You got to get a Stephen Covey in there. So 7 Habits. And then one for me, it's going to be either extreme ownership or the dichotomy of leadership.
Gotcha.
I loved that. Both of those were there. Those would be top 3.
And same for movies, because there's some great business movies, and it could be business movies. It could be just for entertainment. Like I was on The Verge a couple weeks ago, and he asked me the same question. He was like, "What's your favorite movie?" I was like, "The Hangover, man." Like,
I mean, that was one or two.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
One that we did love, I got to watch with my kids. So I'll just say, bringing that back, Top Gun Maverick.
Yes, that was
just
good.
Because growing up and we got to watch Top Gun, but then to watch it with my kids and to go through that was kind of a cool moment to go through that with them.
Yeah.
I go back to Will Smith. What was the movie with his son?
The Pursuit of Happiness.
Pursuit of Happiness.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
That one for me, I go back to, and it's
when they were sleeping in the bathroom.
Dude, that as a dad, there's just something about. So I'm gonna go Pursuit of Happiness. Couldn't remember that one. And then either we could go Good Will Hunting, which was awesome. Or Boiler Room.
Boiler Room's killer too.
For sales, just because you watch that and you're like, I mean, I've seen some of that in real life.
Yeah.
Right as you go through that.
Yep. There's and there obviously the Founder's a great movie too when it comes to that stuff. But there's a scene that we talk about here all the time. I'm big on, like, anytime you unveil a new product, like, you have to simulate it, man. Yeah. Like, what's the customer going to experience? You have to know before they tell you, right? So like when they're out on developing the Speedy system and they're out there on the tennis courts with the chalk doing it, literally when we laid out this office that we're in today, while we figure out what we want to do with other stuff, we were literally, before the carpets went in and everything, we were in here drawing on the floors, trying to figure out how things were going to flow and what that was going to look like. Right. So that's one of my, out of that whole movie, which is fantastic. That scene right there is what really gets it for me.
Yeah. There's always that one scene that you go to, and great movies will pull you through emotionally, right?
That's right.
The highs and the lows.
That's right. So when it comes to the upcoming masterclass, everybody that's interested in that, where can they go to find information out about it? And they need to be registering, right?
They do. So we're going to be releasing that next week. So just go to my website, the www.briancovey.com.
Yep.
You got that there. We'll have it there. We are going to be putting that on Facebook and advertising that out on IG. So we're looking forward to this. It's
perfect. And that's the next masterclass, and there's going to be more to follow, right?
There will be.
Perfect. And then, and folks, check it out. Once again, if you want to, find the Finding Your Competitive Edge podcast, want to buy the book, anything that Brian's got going on, it's right on his website, briancovey.com. Follow him on Instagram at Brian Covey. Obviously, like, folks, this is a crazy world we live in the world of real estate right now. You need to have good people on your side. RevolutionMortgage.com. I can't think of a better place to send you, right? Brian, is there anything else before we bring this sucker to a close that you want to leave anybody with?
What I would say to everybody is we all have a story. How you decide to use that story is going to be the determinant of your life.
Dang, that was good. I can't think of a better way. to bring it to a close. Can't think of a better way. Well, brother, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come join me today. Like this was a whole lot of fun. Like I love all my guests. That most common question I get is, who's your favorite guest? I'm like, well, my dad, my son, my wife, all been on it. So like, I got to go home.
That's right.
I got to go home. So I try to skate around that one. This has been a lot of fun, brother. Like again, I learned this is, I'm actually leaving this episode, like my day's better because I spent an hour with you, man. So absolutely, thank you for being here, brother.
Thank you.
Once again, folks, big shout out and thanks to Brian Covey, the Executive Vice President of Revolution Mortgage, a former professional athlete and an author and the host of the Finding Your Competitive Edge podcast, with much more coming. Once again, briancovey.com for all the latest and greatest, right?
Awesome. Nick, it's been a jam, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. Folks, thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of The Hit Streak. I am your man, Nick Hyder. God bless.